Good evening. I'm Keith Alpert with Athletus.com, and I'm here with assistant coach of the University of California at Santa Barbara, Coach Larry Lewis. Larry is a former assistant with the Sacramento Kings and the Lakers, a longtime professional player, somebody I worked with back in his playing days, and I would say as a basketball player, the hardest and most diligent basketball player I've ever worked with. I used to have workout sheets, and with these workout sheets would give you minimum and maximum times to be completed, and you could set your watch to Larry. Ironically, I had a hockey player who was similar, and you guys were my top two of all time. So Larry, tell me a little bit about, if you remember, how we met back in the day.
Well, your brother, Wayne Alpert, was very instrumental in changing my paradigm at the time. I was playing in Japan, and sometimes it's time to move to a higher level. We just don't know it. We don't recognize it, and so push come to shove, I started working with your brother Wayne, and Wayne said, "We're going to change your body." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You ever met my brother?" And at the time we hadn't met, and he said, "You're never going to be the same." And so we met. I dedicate summers to Waltham, Massachusetts, and in the offseason, I remember the first offseason I came there and we worked out, and Wayne didn't lie. You did what you did, and to this day, my body has never been the same. It never felt better, and a lot of what I learned with you is the reason why. So life changing, career changing, body changing, mind changing, spirit changing experience. Just something about the program and being with you in the weight room daily was a blessing.
So tell everybody how long you played professionally, and what age did you retire?
I played professionally for 19 years and retired at 40 years old. So,
and when I met you, you were how old?
Well, let me see. So I had just finished my career in Japan. I turned 30 in Japan. So I was at least 30 years old. I think either 30 or 31. And so when we met, I had Achilles tendon problems. My back would get sore, and it was just really hard to be consistent, especially with the Achilles tendon problems. So when you introduced me to what stretching can do, blended with the weight room, it really changed everything. Never was the same. Great for me, a problem for others.
And once you got to Spain, talk about a little bit about your time in Spain and that transition you had to make from Japan to Spain.
So I was actually I wasn't comfortable with going to Spain from Japan. I mean, basically I had a franchise in Japan that was pretty loyal to me and dedicated basically the next few years to my career, and they were paying me pretty well. And for me to go from Japan to Spain, I was going from the top division in Japan to the second division in Spain. So, but we got our summer in, and I went to Spain in second division and did what we set out to do, and that was to make everyone know your name. So I had a great year that first year. The coach of that second division team was hired by a first division team, and he told them, I'm coming, but I got to bring Larry with me. And then I ended up playing in Spain for 10 years.
And so what a lot of people don't understand is the difference between playing in Japan and, well, they in terms of that they do pay well, but from a level standpoint versus making the change to Spain. Can you tell that for the audience?
Yes, totally different. The Japanese league, I always ended up playing against the other Americans. So it wasn't like I was playing against a Japanese player. But the supporting cast was not at the level of Spain. Spain professionals start at 16 years old at a high level, play in tournaments and competitions with all over Europe, teams all over Europe, top division. So the level, you're going from about a 6 to 7 to a 9, 9.5, 10 being the NBA. Outside of the NBA, the Spanish league was the best league in the world. And the competition, you're dealing with a different bodies, different athletes, different intellect on the court. So the level was different. The coaching was different. The Americans were different. So I also was different. And I must say that the transition, now that I look back on it, I'm so glad that I bought into Wayne's vision, your vision, Keith, and just let you guys put me on remote control. Sometimes we have to trust people. It's like the message is not always going to be where we think it's going to come from. But if we dedicate ourselves, and when I say we, I'm talking about athletes, young athletes that really don't know how to have a vision, really don't know the scope of the land. But when that dedication and that determination and the willpower kicks in, and we become more listeners rather than arrogant know-it-alls, we can do mighty things.
One thing I want to mention is that for many years, my older brother Wayne and my brother Wayne is a skills coach, a private skills coach, and I dealt with professional basketball players at various levels. And over the years, we've had transitioned to collegiate players looking to get into to professional basketball into professional basketball, and now in general we've worked with younger kids. It's been a lot of fun. So we still do some work together, but also dealing with athletes, not just in the world of basketball. I have football players. I deal with lacrosse players. It's players from different sports in terms of dealing with a time-restricted situation, which is also was my situation with Larry for many years, meaning that he would come back. Typically, when would you get back to the States, Larry?
It would be late May, middle to late May, depending on the playoff situation, June sometimes. So we really, I didn't mention what you did for my diet. I remember, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I want to mention this because it's very important. Anyway, I'd get back middle to late May. So they want me back over there early August. So we had June, July, and August. June, July, basically, to handle whatever business we're going to handle at max 2.5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, when I think about that, that's kind of unbelievable. What would happen in those summers and the way my body would, turn out. And then year after year, it's like real estate, how to go up, and then it may take a little dip, but it's always going to go up higher than it was. And then you come back like this. And that's what I felt like we did, or you did. But the diet thing, Keith, I really want to stress how that has changed my life to this day. I remember 30 days we did the protein diet. I think you're probably up a few levels, nowadays, but with the knowledge then, we did that. Those 30 days changed my life. My game was never the same. My body has never been the same, and my thinking has never been the same. And my approach to food was never the same. And so, um, I feel pretty fit today, and I have a command over what foods I'm going to eat. And there's a mental strengthness that you gain when you have that kind of control. You don't become as emotional over food, and that right there would do us all some justice just in life, especially in America, where every other commercial is a Wendy's or an Arby's or a Burger King or McDonald's. Every billboard has all this stuff, and so that I can't say enough about that. The diet alone, changed my game as well.
And I have to say, a few years back, I got the great opportunity to meet a gentleman that Larry was coaching when he was with the Lakers, and Ryan Kelly, the former Duke star. And I went out to the Lakers facility and did some work with Ryan, and got a chance to see their facility at the time. And I'm taking my camera to the facility just to see what they had. I always get interested in that type of stuff. And I flipped the camera over to Larry, and he's showing me his six pack. And were you in your mid 40s at that point? So
Yeah.
A lot of professional players, when they stop playing, have a very hard time maintaining a lean body because they're not running around quite as much as they were, and training quite as hard because their responsibilities change, especially when they get into coaching, because it's a lot different. It's not as much of certainly a physical job, except when they get on the court and work with guys. But I just, this is a guy who continues to look like he could probably get out there and play. I'm sure you get out there with some of the collegiate kids and teach them a lesson here and there at this point still. So I want to make the point that, so my background is dealing with professional athletes for years, only having 6 to 10, 12 weeks to get ready for the next situation that they have. And many times they would come back because, and Larry, you can talk about this a little bit, how difficult and the expectations were overseas in terms of practicing versus that the NBA tends to manage especially nowadays, tends to manage the load of their top players. And so many times people would come back to me banged up, and they would need a little bit of time to get back. And at the same time, it was cutting into time getting them ready for their next situation.
So overseas, throughout the year, we have 2 practices a day. That alone takes a lot of people out of the sport. But what we would do, I remember always going back in August, and there was always a little drop off because they run the snot out of you in the beginning and in preseason and all that kind of stuff. It really gets to be kind of irrational and ridiculous. It's like, okay, what's the logic behind this and what are we doing? But I was always in shape, and my body was built up from working with Keith so much that my drop off wasn't that much from other people, as compared. I mean, you have guys who they didn't have Keith, right? So I knew I had an advantage. So what I do is the first 3 days, I wouldn't come in last, but I wouldn't push myself to come in first either, because I knew that 2 weeks from then, no one would be thinking about those first 3 days and why overdo it. And, I have this power, I have this strength. I didn't want to, risk anything. And so it was just smarter to me, after those 3 days, when everybody would be breaking down, that's when I would ramp it up. So day 4 and 5, while the first 3 days, they knew I'd been working out because, in the mirror, after working with Keith for those, 6 to 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, my body, you knew I'd been working out. You knew I was in the weight room. You knew I was eating right. And my spirit was right. So it wasn't, they couldn't say I wasn't working out. They couldn't say I wasn't trying because I wasn't coming in last. I just had a strategy. I had nothing to prove because I already knew we put the work in and that I was going to be ready to perform. And it was always about performance. So my point is that day 4 and 5, that's when I would ramp it up when everyone else was breaking down. And it would just get me through the rigorous preseason and just the ridiculousness of all the running and the hills and the mountains, wherever that was. And it was just good to be prepared. And that my drop off wasn't going to be as much as other people's drop off. And that in the beginning of the season, when you have that lead on guys, it helps a lot because it sustained itself. And then Keith, we do our own, weight programs during the year. And while the strength and conditioning coach over there would be like, well, what's that you're doing? I'm like, I have my guy, and this is what we do. I mean, could you have me looking like this? If I was with you all summer, well, this is the guy that has me looking like this. So we're going to stay with it. And so it didn't stop just because I'm on the other side of the world. You were there during those months I was in Spain, and all it took was an email or, you send me those programs, and it would be great during the season to have that. It's like State Farm Insurance, man.
So one of the reasons why I brought Larry on, and I should have mentioned it earlier, but Larry is in a very unique situation being a coach. So he's gone from, and we'll talk about a little bit about your transition to coaching in a moment, but he's now a collegiate coach at a mid-major Division I level. And he's also the parent of a son who's now a junior in high school, who has definite Division I potential, but at minimum, he's definitely at a scholarship level type situation. So we're going to talk about the very unique perspective of going out to recruit, and at the same time being on the other side of it as a parent, trying to help guide his son to collegiate opportunities. So talk about you played in Spain till you're 40, and then talk about your transition into coaching. How did you get started with that?
So as a professional, I come back before I went overseas. I would come back. I played in Cyprus. I played in Dominican Republic before Spain and even before Japan. So when I was in the CBA, which is now the G League, I played for Eric Musselman. And basically, when I retired, Eric Musselman was the head coach of the Defenders, which is the Los Angeles Lakers G League team. So I called him when I retired and asked him, did he have anything? He said, not really, but, I'll keep my eyes open, whatever. So we got off the phone. He called me back 15 minutes later. He said, how long would it take you to get here? I'm about 15 minutes away from the practice facility. So I got in the car, went over there. And from there, he was able to get me on the staff. And we finished that year. We had a great year. And then the next year, Eric Musselman went to ASU, Arizona State. And then Reggie Theus was the head coach the next year. So I worked with Reggie Theus as an assistant the second year. The third year, Mike D'Antoni was on staff, and I was able to be hired as his assistant with the Laker team. So 2 years with the G League, and then went to the NBA team and basically coached there with for Kobe's last 3 years. Then Luke Walton came and cleaned house, and, the only assistant he kept was Mark Madsen. So I ended up in Sacramento Kings and spent 3 years with Sacramento Kings until last year. I just finished my first year with UC Santa Barbara. The interesting thing is, Sacramento Kings, after being there for 3 years, the same guy, Luke Walton, comes to Sacramento, cleans house again. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what the message is, what the universe is saying, but we'll see.
Well, I guess you have to avoid Luke Walton, huh?
Yeah, or maybe he should avoid me. Hell, stop following me, man.
Yeah, that's it. So talk about what it's like first. So step back for 1 second. So obviously we're in a pandemic and we'll get to that. But typically, in my situation, I've gone from working with guys who I only had 6 to 12 weeks to work with in the off season. And I started working with the young basketball players who are playing in whether it's school or AAU for at least 10 and a half months out of the year. And that doesn't leave them a lot of time to put a body on. So I catch the kids usually for 2 days a week on average, if there are periods where it's a little lighter, and once a week during busy times. And I've actually been able to apply what I've done with professionals in the past within that model because of all the work. And they're also kids, so they have schoolwork, they have friends, they have other moving parts in their life. Talk about how important it is. First, talk about before the pandemic hit, talk a little bit about recruiting from your standpoint. What is it that you're looking for? And how you go out and find players for a mid-major team, because at that level, it's probably a little more of a crapshoot, I would think.
Well, I look at it like this. When I go see kids play, okay, who would I pick on my team? And this is where just growing up in the sport as a player, my outlook may be different than someone who didn't play, okay? There are certain players that fit in a system. There are certain players that don't. So I'm also looking at it two ways. I'm looking at it from the viewpoint of our coach, our head coach, and I'm also looking at it from the viewpoint as if I was the head coach. Because I think when you're an assistant, your job is to support the coach and assist the head coach. But you always keep your head coaching mind in shape. I always have my opinion about players. And sometimes I keep it to myself, sometimes I share it. But these kids today, they have the wrong idea about what it takes to get to the NBA. They think it's about points and points and points. No. Rebounds help, yes. Passing, screening, all that stuff, but character. There's a lot to be said for character. How do you react to different situations? And I look at those things as well. So it's amazing to me how many players trick coaches and scouts. And I'm wondering to myself, well, not wondering to myself, I know that they're looking at something completely different than what I'm looking at or what I'm looking for. And it's important for a player to be alert on the court, energetic on the court, and mindful of his or her responsibility. There's a very responsible aspect to this sport that I don't think people understand. But when a player is responsible, that player can be depended on. They don't cheat the sport. They don't cheat practice. They don't cheat preparation. And those are the players that usually make a program great and a culture great. And so when I go out and look at kids, I look at these things. When I talk to kids, I listen for the words they use when they talk, how they use their eyes in communication. When they shake your hand, is it firm or is it soft? Little things like that, I think, matter, regardless of a player who can play with talent. I mean, you can have a talented jerk on your team, screw the whole locker room up. You're not going to win anyway.
So that's very interesting. The kids are the kids at all levels seem to be all worried about how they started with ESPN. They want to be in ESPN's top 10, and they don't understand. And I'll hear it from kids. They don't understand why certain guys do make the league who wouldn't seem. And I'm not talking about some of the flamboyant guys who may or may not belong in the league, due to their attitudes, which might be suspect. But then you'll see some other guys who play, young men don't understand, or kids don't understand why they're in the league, and I think it has a lot to do with what you're saying. Coaches need to depend on people, and that's why they're willing to put up with maybe a little less talent sometimes with that. So talk about how things have changed now with the pandemic in terms of being able to not only deal with your current kids, but in terms of looking for the next group.
Well, we've all basically turned into the Jetsons. Flat screens, video calls, Zoom calls. We're on our phones making calls. So a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of opinions from scouts and that kind of thing. I think it's tough when you can't really use the summer wisely, and there is no AAU. Am I a fan of AAU? It doesn't matter, because that's where you're going to see the kids. I mean, the style of play is a little different, but when you know how to look at kids, you know how to scout a game and to see what's important. Even from a kid going from the NCAA or college ranks to the NBA, very rarely is that rookie look to score 15 to 20 points in a game. What else is he bringing to the table? So I say that to say that, recruiting now, it's been a summer of Zoom calls, very little action on the court. We have a season, I guess, that's going to come up next year, early next year. And that time has to be used wisely if it happens. The scary thing is that it's been hard to, really depend on dates that have been set. Dates get pushed back, postponed, canceled, that kind of thing. So, other than that, we'll just have to go on word of mouth, and which makes it really tough. And just have to look at this season, this high school season, and whatever AAU action we get or tournament action we get early next year.
Talk about because there's been scaled back AAU. I know in Massachusetts they're not allowing it, to at least in terms of games. So people are running up to New Hampshire. They might be starting to allow it a little bit. They do allow for practice, but it's scaled down. There's very few places or facilities that are large for athletes to work out right now. So I've actually used it as an opportunity to give. I've had more people in my little gym in my house training them because there's been no access. And right now at your school, do you guys have access to the weight room?
No, we don't have access to the weight room, nor do we have access to our gym, our arena, nor do we have access to our locker rooms.
So that's the craziness that's kind of going on, give or take, around the country. Obviously, California's probably on average a little bit stricter than a lot of the other states, but that's a reality right now.
Right.
Oh, to the high school kid that's prospective, I see it as an opportunity because a lot of people aren't training right now, and it's a great opportunity for them. And talk about also from a standpoint, you obviously experience what it's like when you transform your body, but now you have these the high school kids who in general haven't had a lot of time to train. They travel a lot up until recently with the pandemic, and have not had a real opportunity to build the kind of body that's going to be a college ready. And talk about the difference. You talked a little bit certainly about character. But now if you get two character guys and one that's clearly been busting his ass in the weight room and one that hasn't, who are you more likely to choose?
Well, that's going to be one of the bigger things in this whole thing, the pandemic, is that these players have an opportunity to do that, they can absolutely change their bodies, and they have time to do it right now. If they have you, Keith, they're in a good situation if they use it correctly. You never know what your competition is doing. And so you want to be the one that comes out on the other end of this ahead. So it's an opportunity to really, if you're going to be a senior, you could come back to this season in 2021 really with the body of a freshman or a sophomore in college. So if you use this time wisely and it's your senior year, you will play your senior year of high school basketball with the body as if you were a freshman or sophomore in college. And that puts you way ahead of the game if you use this time wisely right now.
Tell these the kids who need to consider doing that for themselves why that's important. It's one thing to get recruited. It's one thing to even be a scholarship level guy. I tell people all the time that in all the divisions across the country, there's only 3.5% of the players that actually play at any level of collegiate basketball. It's 1, and 1.4% respectively from Division I down to 3. So it's even the Division III level. They like to tend to go with the veterans who are college ready from a body standpoint. And so you can probably share an example or two of what you've seen from young guys who are physically prepared, and you have more confidence in to be able to hold up in the more physical part of the college game.
Yes, holdbacks are really important, are really popular right now. People hold their kids back a grade for that very reason. So any kid that's not a holdback, okay? So holdbacks, they're in the 11th grade, right? But they should be a senior. They're in the 10th grade, they should be a junior. And so it's kind of not a level playing field for the kids that aren't holdbacks. Here's your chance to even the playing field. It won't matter if you're playing against a holdback or not, right? People taking advantage of that rule, and maybe in the 7th or 8th grade, they'll hold the kid back. So now that 7th grader is now in the 6th grade. That 8th grader is now in the 7th grade. And so they appear to be better than what they are. A year in junior high school is huge. A year in high school is huge. Now is an opportunity to make up for it, even the playing field, if you're not a holdback.
That's very important that you have that, take advantage of that opportunity. I've seen it so many times when guys don't get an opportunity, and I always get the call, I'm playing with men, and I feel like I'm behind. And so that the holdbacks are very, very big right now. Everybody's looking to grab one of those spots, even at the Division III level. I always tell people, even at Division III, it might be an opportunity to get into a phenomenal academic school, even if it's not a scholarship level. And typically, they'll usually find some form of money in an academic scholarship or a leadership type money that goes towards it. Certainly not athletic. With that being said, what is talk about now as a parent with your son Landon, now entering his junior year of high school, and as a parent, from a parent perspective, what is it that you're looking to do to help Landon along?
Well, we use this time wisely. My message to Landon is always the weight room and stretching. We get on the court together, but on the court, you can only do things your body and your mind allow you to do. So if your body's not strong, you can run into as many people as you want to. But do you want to run into somebody and make an impact, or do you run into somebody and be impacted? So we always teach to hit first. And so without a body, you probably won't do much damage, right? And what Landon doesn't shy away from any contact ever. he'll initiate it, but he can only do that because he's been in the weight room. So our son is not a holdback. He's got a 3.9, so he's a great student, way better than I was. He's way smarter than I was. I graduated high school at 6'3". He's already 6'5". I didn't lift a weight until I was, I guess, in college. I didn't train in the weight room until I got with you, Keith. There's a difference between lifting weights, exercising, and training, and bodybuilding. So he understands that, and you know, my experience in it is just what I'm talking to him about. And I charge him to take his own responsibility for how he uses his time. You know, when I'm in Santa Barbara, he has to take his own responsibility, just like he does with his books, to get in the weight room. And we have weights here he can lift, and stretch, and all that kind of thing. Those things that are, you know, represent a responsible athlete. So I know what he's gonna face, and people want warriors. People want some dog. People want dedicated, tough-minded competitors. But see, if you aren't in the weight room, your mind doesn't get to the place where you push yourself through some pain, through some struggle, through resistance. And you get through that level of resistance, and you have to get to the next level of resistance. That's where you win. If you just want to do push-ups all day, have fun. But when you run into someone that's been hitting that iron, you're going to know.
A great example obviously in the NBA final is Jimmy Butler. When he drives, Larry, Coach Lewis is talking about, is he goes and he's hitting to hurt. And of course, within the legal part of the game. But that's a level of physicality that you have to have. And especially for the young guys trying to move up to play against the older guys in college, you've got to be physically ready so that you can, as we used to say, blast somebody. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Larry?
I just really, you know, for the young athletes that whether they speak the language or not, there's a combination of things that you want to implement. Diet, the weight room, and stretching. Now, student athletes have to, you know, perform academically as well. But if you don't diet, you won't know how to control your mind and your emotions when it comes to food. And when you hit some turbulence, sometimes food is looked at as a passive way to comfort yourself. Don't rely on that, okay? Control your mind, control your attitude towards food, and understand that what you don't eat is probably more important, or just as important as what you eat. So if you combine that, okay, so now your mind is right. The weight room is going to take your mind to a whole nother level in a whole nother way. Okay, so now you have control, you have mental control. The weight room will give you mental willpower and mental strength. The stretching will eliminate the limitations of your body, your range of motion. You're not as apt to get injured. And if you do have a strain, it's not going to be as severe, and you'll pop back faster. You'll bounce back. You'll heal faster. And when you combine those three things, it's all about performance. You're doing this so you can perform. You're not doing it to look good. Jimmy Butler runs into people, but look at his body. Johnson doesn't do that. Hero doesn't do that. They're great players, but they're not going to slam into, he'll slam into LeBron, he'll slam into AD. Jimmy Butler has no fear. Imagine yourself having no fear. You got to work for that. You have to have the body for it, the mind for it, and the flexibility for it, to where you don't fear a collision with anybody.
Yeah, he's a great example of somebody, and now he's really, if he didn't burst onto the scene before in people's eyes as one of the top players in the sport, he certainly has their attention now. And then one last little thing, how would you advise parents to help their young prospect increase their chances of getting college opportunities, or increasing the number of options they may have if they're at a collegiate level?
I think parents supporting the training is very important. And when the parents' opinion of their child is too positive, not too positive, is exaggerated. Like, your opinion of how good your son or daughter is really doesn't matter. I think a lot of parents, can push that opinion in some directions that are really irrelevant. It's not necessary. The bottom line is, the best players are not all in the NBA, right? And so for a parent to say my athlete is an NBA player, or is going to Duke, or is going to North Carolina, or is just as good as those other guys, it doesn't matter. So sometimes it's important not to say anything as a parent, but get the training and support the training, support the preparation. Let everything else go. I'm not saying don't say positive things about your child. I'm not saying that. But don't let your opinion be exaggerated. In what I'm saying is, support the preparation. Everything else, it's your child, so you're going to think a certain way about him or her. You know what I mean? So, but that's the part I think should be kept, pretty much to a parent, just to the parent. The child doesn't need to know how good he or she is. The coach, the AD, the owner, the general manager, it's that opinion what counts. So if you support the preparation, I think that's where the focus should be.
That's a lot of gold that you have given. If and I have some people that may watch us from Canada, from some other parts of the world or the country, if you have any young potential kids who might be worthy of being looked at a mid-major Division I level that's for some reason not being looked at, how would they contact you, Larry?
You have all my information, and I trust you. Feel free to give them my phone number, my email address. They can call me anytime. They can leave a message. They can send a message. I'll get back with them, and we can talk about life, athletes, their child, the NCAA, the NBA, the WNBA, overseas, ACB, which is the top league in Spain, the Euro League, which is the top European competition in Spain, different levels in Europe. We can talk about anything they would want to. It's about sharing the information, sharing the knowledge that I have from my experience, sharing what I'm learning every day. And so, feel free, Keith, to do that. And I am offering that level of communication to anyone you see fit to share my information with, please.
Well, that's an unbelievable offer from someone who has a lot of very unique experiences in the sport. To reach me, Keith Alpert, KeithalPert @gmail.com. You can DM me on Facebook, Keith Alpert, or at Athletis, ATHLETIST.com. Larry, thanks so much for your time, and it was great catching up with you on this, and it brought back a lot of memories, and I should have had at least 20 people like Larry Lewis in my life to train. And I've been fortunate to have a few, but nobody like this gentleman that you just had a chance to listen to. So thanks again for your time, Larry.
Thank you, Keith. And anyone who wants to contact me, please feel welcome. And I'm willing to help.
Thanks again, Larry.
All right. Have a good night, Keith. Thank you.